Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. Friends, my name is Mark Kotrovsky, and I'm here with Sergey Kotrovsky. The Christmas season is in full swing. We're about to talk about some more coffee myths, misconceptions on today's episode. If you haven't listened to last episode where we talk about pretty much myths about espresso, like shots dying and crema and all that good stuff. I don't know if it's good stuff. Not that I know of. That I know of. Yeah. So
I got a few text messages.
Nice. That's great. That's great. So today will be all things filter coffee, but before we get into that, let's pour some batchy.
Got it. Let me move stuff around. Side note, PSA, I'm going away for Christmas. For the first time in a long time.
Correct.
So I don't know why this jacket is buttoned up like this. A leather jacket, like zipped. Just this like
no mobility.
Zip.
Mobility is like out of 5.
With that said, two things. Like if I know there's listeners in Spokane area who have like commented and talked to us. I'll be in the area. Probably will hang out at Hatch at some point. Really like Hatch. They serve some good stuff. And then there's I think Ladder Coffee. You know Ladder?
Ladder?
Yeah. I think Ladder. I haven't been there. Leonard Maddie from Onyx.
Right.
She was there with Davis, I think, when they were doing their cupping tour. And I saw that. And Maddie, like my Maddie, she also knows Ladder. So I'm going to pop into Ladder. So if you're in the area, folks, over Christmas, I might be able to connect with you out there in good old Spoklahoma.
Nice.
Outside of that, what I was going to say is like
Spoklahoma.
Spokehampton. Some people call it Spokehampton, but I'm not going to keep those comments to myself. Yeah. It's more Spoklahoma. It's like the Midwest of Washington.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's one thing. The other thing is I'm probably going to be roasting earlier or later this week, earlier in the week, to get some orders out for you folks who are probably trying to order very tight to Christmas, because I'll probably won't be roasting on our normal Christmas week because I'll be out. And speaking of that, I'll probably have to record the pod towards the end of the week when I get back after Christmas. But I don't think it should be a problem unless it's a problem for your scheduling.
That's great. We'll make it work.
Sick. Yeah. That's nice. As a Prodigal coffee, yeah. No?
Yes.
Yeah. I think Prodigal coffees always stand out with their juiciness. They're usually juicy on a level that's like unlike many other coffees, and that's why I really enjoy Prodigal coffees. Have you seen how that a lot of Prodigal coffees have the same flavor notes? Almost. From coffee to coffee. Did you notice that?
I did, but it kind of makes sense because we sometimes fall into that too. Yeah. Because I think how you source coffees tends to be according to a specific preference. Yeah. And so if you like certain coffees, then you're probably gonna say you're just gonna source in the same in the similar direction, you know. Yeah. So all the coffees are gonna appear to be really, really tasty for you, and they happen to always have stone fruit.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's it.
That's fair.
So
yeah, I like it. It's juicy. It's like got a little bit of pineapple on it too.
I think it's a natural Colombian, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. It has a natural flavor to it.
And it does not. Depends on who's listening when you say that. It's like, this is not like quote unquote boozy or.
It's not boozy.
It might have a little bit of this like whininess to it.
Yeah, it has like just a little bit of that. Yeah.
Small amount.
Yeah. It's not fermenty. It's not like vegetal. No. It's but it. I would, if I were to blindly taste this, I'd probably assume that it's
a natural.
It's not a wash. That's it. So
yeah.
But nonetheless, well, friends, last week, as I said, we talked about all things espresso myths this
Yeah.
week. We're diving into, misconceptions of filter coffee, of making coffee, pour over, and all that jazz. I know what's not on your list that I'm just gonna touch upon real briefly
please.
is, and we talk about this all the time, but the concept of coffee aging. Sorry, not green coffee aging, but like resting coffee, roasted coffee.
Or like freshness, coffee freshness.
Yeah, coffee freshness. And
Wait,
I wanted to touch upon that.
We can touch up on that. But our side note, again, like this is like the background of pre-production. Are we doing one on like misconceptions about roasting?
Oh, we actually should. That would be fun.
I've been thinking about that and writing notes, and it's kind of hard.
Let's do it. I think that'd be a good idea.
I can get very dicey. But the reason I bring that up is because...
Let's do it.
Oh, man. That's going to be a hard one. Anyway, but the reason I bring that up is because coffee freshness it falls into two categories. It falls into misconceptions about roasting and roasted coffee.
Yeah.
And it falls into misconceptions about brewing coffee as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fair. We'll probably talk about it more, but it's fair to bring it up now.
That's a great one to do. Yeah. But the interesting thing is, as you look at freshness, the transition from going, hey, the sooner the better. Mm-hmm. You have to drink your coffee within 2 weeks for freshness. This was like back 10 years ago or whatever. And then now that, coffees are being cracked open, no less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Yeah. Some people are saying, 45, 60 days off of roast.
Wild.
Like speaking of prodigal, like Scott mentioned in a post recently, he tried a coffee 90 days off of roast that tasted as better than it's ever tasted. And it's, and I know there's like some like lightness, color, development levels matter. The roast machine matters, like stuff like that. But the interesting thing has been like the bash on grocery store coffee has always been stale coffee.
Yeah.
Well, if you can buy grocery store coffee at 30 days, 50 days, 60 days within
I'm going to get pushback on that, but
like,
go ahead.
Yeah. Is it any worse to get it at the grocery store if you're still resting your coffee 30 to 45 days off roast? And when you could just walk into a grocery store and pick it up, and it's probably going to be, I mean, sometimes if you get
rested on their real estate, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, at that point, that's just something I've been thinking about. I'm like, that's interesting. Like the problem how we've transitioned from like bashing grocery stores for having really, really aged coffee, not fresh enough, where now it's like, we're like fighting to, like, people are being impatient, not waiting long enough to brew their coffee. So it's just an interesting turn of events. I know, of course, that most grocery store coffee is probably not going to be an ultra light roast or
I was
light
just
roast.
going to bring that up.
Like I'm gonna acknowledge that. But if there was like a light roast coffee, like a light roast specialty coffee company that put their coffee into grocery stores, would you consider going to the grocery store, going to your local Whole Foods to pick up that coffee that's 30 days off of roast? Technically, you'd still have to wait that long.
Yeah. Yeah, I am totally here for resting coffee on someone else's real estate. Like, why does it need to sit on your shelf? Let it sit on their shelf.
I didn't buy coffee from Narrative this week, so I was like, I'll just come back a week later. And unfortunately, like, it might not be there. But I was like, if it's going to be there in a week, I'll just go pick it up. It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. No, I agree. I agree with that. The challenge is also grocery store coffee tends to, people who shop for coffee at grocery stores tend to lean towards a certain roast level. So I don't think grocery store coffee have enough coffee that are roasted according to the parameters that would allow or that would benefit resting the coffee for that long.
Right, 100%. Yeah.
And that's a challenge. You know, it'd be fun to do is to have a little video / research on going in grocery stores, and this would cost a decent amount of money. but color reading all of their coffee on the shelf.
It's true. That
And then that would be a lot of money, actually. It'd be hundreds of dollars probably. But color reading all of the coffees and then finding the average roast level of grocery store coffees. And then having a database of grocery stores by city across the United States with their Agtron reading.
In case it's for the two people that might be interested in going and buying a bag of coffee, and they need to know their Agtron rating.
Yeah, it's like know that like Target in San Francisco's Agtron reading is
average is lower.
This
is lower than, Yeah,
that would be some market research. That would be a lot. That would cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's worth investing, but if someone behind, like, I don't know, if someone behind Target is listening and thinks this is a genius idea, or if someone behind Amazon and Whole Foods wants all of their Whole Foods stores with the Agtron reading, you might have to sign me up. Like, I'm going to charge a pretty penny for that salary, but you can sign me up.
Yeah. Well, number one, what are we diving into? The official list.
Yeah.
Flow rate.
Yep. Flow rate.
What's this? Expand.
Oh, man. There was a misconception back in the day that I don't know if James Hoffman debunked or someone debunked, is the fact that if water dribbles on top, and this might be an old misconception, but I want to bring it up because I want to touch base on this. This affects extraction a lot. Is that dribbling water on top of your slurry will cause over extraction? I'm confused by that. That doesn't make sense.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I also heard about it when I started doing research on flow rate, and I'm like, why did people think that? If the water splash if the stream's not connected, if there's no laminal flow in the stream, meaning the stream breaks up before it enters the slurry, that it could cause over extraction. Maybe I'm wrong,
confused.
but I'm confused by that, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because it's the complete opposite. The stream is actually not bringing enough energy to your slurry if it's breaking up before the before the slurry surface.
Right.
So I don't know if that actually needs to be something that we talk about even more, because I feel like it's common sense. Like, and slurry, Jonathan Gagne and Ad Astra back in the day before he wrote the book did a lot of research on that, basically saying that how long your kettle stream is and how fast your pour rate is going to affect extraction by quite a bit. And not only is it going to affect it because of the energy that's going in from the flow rate and the temperature and where the breaking point of your kettle stream is, not only is that affecting, it's also affecting drawdown time based on pressure, like how quickly you pour in water and how tall your water column is. So
what did he say about that?
Do you remember? You mean the height of the water column? Yeah. Technically, so if you're pouring faster, and you're filling up, you're creating a little more pressure in the water column.
So it's gonna go. It will go down faster. Slower because there's too much pressure.
No, because now I'm trying to remember all that. I didn't do research on this because I did the research on other stuff. Right. But you got me here. I believe the taller the column is gonna actually create slower drawdown time.
Interesting.
Than pouring but then pulsating also really matters. Yeah. So if you're pulsating quite a bit, it actually slows down drawdown time. Like my pour over recipes have went back to 68 in 300 or 23 grams of coffee and 368 grams of water or milliliters of water, and I'm pulsating the bloom and 3 more times. And I'm grinding. Apart from my other recipe, the classic like 25 to 350 or 20 to 300, I'm grinding on my ode about 2 or 3 steps coarser.
That makes sense.
Because pulsating will actually extend your,
that makes sense.
Your contact time.
Yeah.
So, also you're able to add a little more energy with the kettle stream. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So not having a full-on long stream doesn't actually, over extract your coffee.
No.
It actually probably does the opposite because you're not creating as much agitation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing with like the mellow drip where it was like, yeah, it helps, but, after Jonathan said, hey, like actually keeping that stream dialed in and pouring from a higher point will actually create more agitation. Yeah. Which then, more agitation will probably lead to more extraction. Yeah.
Again, what I want to make sure that people hear is we're not saying that more agitation equals better tasting coffee.
Yeah, that's
not what we're saying. Yeah. We're talking about the correlation between agitation and extraction percentage here. That's a whole different story. Like it doesn't, like the numbers that we talk about, sometimes like 19 to 22% is of extraction percentage. Like different coffees taste good at different percentages. Yes. You know what I mean? And then that also leads to the idea of like, and I don't think I put this on the list, but the concept of over extraction. And a lot of myths about coffee being over extracted at certain percentages, where Scott has repeatedly said, like brewers like the Pulsar or even or is it Next Level or Trickle It, like extraction percentages were going very high up without tasting a lot of bitterness.
Right. Well, that concept of bitterness and astringency is equal to over extracting. Yeah. Not 100% accurate. It's astringency is probably coming from bitter compounds that are getting through your bed. It's probably more of a problem of channeling than it is anything else. So, and which makes sense. Like if you're thinking, hey, I'll just grind coarser. Like
you will decrease the amount of channeling.
Yeah, you'll decrease channeling, which will make your coffee taste less bitter. Yeah. But you might also sacrifice extraction level. Yeah. So, but that doesn't correlate to the fact that, hey, that doesn't correlate to the fact that you over extracted before. Yeah. It was just that you didn't really do a great job of brewing a clean brew with fine coffee. With finely ground coffee, because it's harder to brew coffee ground finer because you have to be way more meticulous about what you're doing with the slurry, what you're doing with your drawdown with the bed and all that jazz. So
100%. And that's also why you see, and maybe I'm wrong, so I don't want to say I'm absolutely right in this, but what I'm noticing is like, especially in competition like Brewers Cup, like you see smaller doses and finer ground coffee with dispersion screens on top. Like, Alika uses, you know what I mean? It's like, it is going pretty fine. You don't need as much agitation to extract. But you're also, the dispersion screens on top, like kind of like the mellow dripper, not exactly, help you control flow rate. Right. It's like the Trickle It, like you can literally use a pot of water and dump water on it. It's still going to disperse across the same. Right. Those holes are like a screen on an espresso machine. It's just dispersing water, no matter how much water you pour. Will it affect a little bit of flow rate? Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. More water column in the dispersion screen is going to add more, but I get it. But the reality is like, that's why it's dispersing water across your slurry. Yeah. And it gives you more control. And I've noticed that there's like doses, like sometimes, I don't remember exactly. I believe Alika's, one of his recipes had 18 grams of coffee in, and like contact time is very short, but it's tasty and extracted really, really well. And there's a lot of strategy when it comes to comp doing that, because you're brewing 3 brews and you have limited amount of time. You have to play the game. Yeah. And doesn't always mean that you got the best version of that coffee, but you got a unreal version of that coffee within the parameters that are set for you. Right. So that's where, and again, to circle around, not saying that all dispersion screens are going to under extract your coffee. Right. That is interesting. Yeah, that's the game when brewing filter coffee is like, you have to figure out which parameters to use, like, because there's kind of like, it's like, walking into a garage with lots of tools, and you can actually use multiple tools at once, and pair different items together to achieve the same result. Yep.
And depending on how you pair them together
Yep.
will result in a different coffee experience. And
Yeah.
it's finding out which one is most consistent for you, which one's the most enjoyable for you,
Yeah.
workflow and all that jazz. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to give blanket statements.
Yeah.
Because so
Yeah. With that said, I think what the other one I mentioned was temp, water temp, and was that one of them, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, we all remember this is when brewing off of boil was burning your coffee.
Right.
And I don't know if that's another myth or misconception from roast level. Like I think roasting has gotten so much better and so much more precise. And there's way more roasting companies. There's way more roasting data out now. So we're making better guesses or better, we're making better decisions, that is. Still, some of it feels like guesses. But anyway, making better decisions based on that. So therefore, that has changed how we brew, because I feel like, or correct me if I'm wrong, the misconception about coffee, about brewing at a higher temp, is based on roast levels that are like fairly dark,
Right.
or the flavor of burnt. You're not literally burning coffee. And I think when people say that, what they're saying is they're getting burnt flavors. And I don't think that necessarily has to do on your water temp. That probably has more to do with the roast level.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then when you brew a dark roast or a more developed medium roast at a lower temp, you're technically minimizing the amount of bitterness you're tasting, or under extracting a dark roast, and it tastes better. What I mean?
Which makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. All these are kind of somewhat connected together because, just because you're using, you're brewing off of boil, you're potentially increasing extraction because you're brewing with hotter water.
Yeah.
But if you're brewing something like a dark roast, you're extracting stuff you probably don't want, and it's going to taste a little bitter, harshness. Yeah, that's going to taste. You might think that that's burning your coffee. Yeah, this is bad terminology.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also, with on the flip side, I don't know, like it's become really popular to brew coffee with very low temp,
like 200 degrees.
200 degrees, which is very interesting. Like, I don't know. Like my brewing recipe right now is like, I'm brewing at like 208, 206, 207.
Oh, wow.
Which is much lower than usual. But I'm like, how do you, like, why go down much lower if you're realistically decreasing that temperature?
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're, because then unless you're counteracting that with finer grind, longer drawdown time, with other kinds of maybe agitation. Yeah. Again, it's like that whole conversation about you're just using different parameters and pushing them in different way. I have noticed though, the coffees brewed with a lower temp tend to hide certain things in the coffee and tend to have like their own unique like mouthfeel and texture and flavor perception in general. Like you can still get a good cup, but it's definitely going to taste and seem different.
I think it also, water temp should also be paired with water composition. Yeah. Because the hardness of your water and water temp, I think there's a play in those variables when they're combined. Right off the top of my dome right now, what I'm thinking is that harder water, you could decrease your water temp for That's more exceptional brew, where softer water, you should probably increase your water temp.
That's interesting.
That's me just kind of riffing off my dome right now from what I understand.
Yeah.
Maybe wrong, but I think that's fairly accurate. I think with that, also understanding the fact that when water's coming out of your kettle, where it's being measured, like on your fellow kettle, the thermometer is not at the top of your gooseneck.
Right.
So when that water is traveling through your kettle, through your gooseneck, into the air, and then into your slurry, it's more accurate to measure the temperature of your slurry than to measure the temperature of your water in the kettle.
Right.
Now, of course, if you decrease that beginning temperature, it's going to decrease the slurry temperature. But if 212 is burning your coffee, that's also inaccurate because it's not 212 in your slurry.
Yeah, it's much. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the other part of it is like, well, of course, if you start with hotter water, your end temp or your actual concoction, your actual coffee beverage isn't going to be as high of temp. So cooler beverage, and if you sip right after brewing, you're going to experience coffee way differently than if your coffee is X amount of degrees hotter.
That's fair.
So there's like, all of those are tied together, and your perception of what burnt coffee tastes like because you started with a number of 212 isn't scientific or accurate, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's an easy one.
Easy.
It does not burn your coffee if you brew off boil.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, less fines is better.
Do you remember when we used to sift?
Yes.
We were really into sifting for a while.
Yes.
Yep. So, and like even I remember
this one's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
This one has multiple layers.
There's accuracy to it. There's a lot of things we can discuss on this one, which again, I think for a while there was this trend if the more fines, because grinders weren't as awesome as they are now.
Yeah.
It's like the more you minimize fines, the better your coffee tastes.
Yeah.
And there is truth to that if we talk about grinders 10 years ago.
Yes.
Because those grinders were basically creating such a wide range of particle size that you would have really coarse and really fine. And that would create a unequal extraction, of course. Nowadays, I think when that gap between fines and coarseness is much tighter now, especially when we're talking about the amount of microns in fines and grinders. Like if you look at Weber's grinders and all of that, they're grinding at a different RPM. They have a smaller range of the microns, the finer micron of particle size in there. So I don't think it's like, I'm not going to say the point blank that, fines are good, but I don't think fines are as big of a concern as they used to. And that is more or less has to do with the quality of grinders that we have now. The other caveat that I used to do this, and I think Lance talked about this, is the idea of double grinding, right? Going coarse and then going, again, finer to, again, mitigate that range between your coarser particle size and your finer particle size. But I don't know. Have you ever done the kind of experiment about removing all the fines and just brewing the identical particle size in your cup?
No, I have not.
I have, and your coffee tastes kind of boring.
Yeah,
it just doesn't have the same amount of complexity as if you had the necessary amount of fines.
Yeah, there seems to be like a spectrum. Like if you remove completely all your fines, it's not going to taste the same way. Having too much fines is also not bad. It's not good. Yeah. Because I mean that's literally what these nicer grinders, flat burrs, all this high uniformity burrs are literally trying to eliminate, is trying to lessen that gap. Yeah. And so there's like a spectrum. So at some point, fines are not doing you good. They're probably muddying up your cup. They're not tasting great. But then to a certain extent, they're okay. They're okay. Yeah. And this is, I think, where kind of like, I know we've talked about this a lot, but this is where kind of burrs do maybe alter the flavor profile of your cup. Because if your grinders has producing a ton of fines, I mean, no matter how you brew that, it's probably going to taste gross and muddy or
like sweeter.
Yeah, right. Or sweeter. Yeah. Or on the flip side, if you have burrs that are more high uniformity and are nailing most of your dose is within a specific size, then yeah, you're going to get maybe a cleaner brew, what people are saying. You might be able to get a little bit more nuance.
Yeah.
But yeah, sifting out completely is probably not going to be, it's not the best, really.
It doesn't, and that's also, in my opinion, doesn't produce the fullest tasting cup, like a cup that I would enjoy for everything that the coffee has got, in a sense. Again, like I feel like that's a hot take. The other things, like this is a conversation that's more about how far grinders have excelled, versus actually just the idea of adding or removing fines. I have heard people that would sort their particle size in a like 20, let's say 20 grams, and then they would add a certain amount of coffee at a certain micron level.
That's wild.
Into their recipe.
That's
and I'm like,
wild.
who has the time for that?
Yeah,
I'm like, really? That's pretty next level. Like, my recipe is 20 grams of coffee, 10 grams at this micron level, 10 grams at this micron level, and it produces the most tastiest, brew of Prodigal ever. Like,
that's insane.
But, and that's the thing. It's like, for me, Weber was when people started talking about RPMage in the grinder, like that's what caught my eye with the EG1, right? Is that the RPM, you're able to control the RPM on that, and the how your motor's working actually does dictate the amount of fines you have. So
again, I'm glad you brought up that thing about grinders, because a lot of these misconceptions, whether that's last episode on espresso or this week more filter oriented, and maybe if we do the roasting one, it's like, it's misconceptions that were kind of built around this specific time in the industry of the understanding that we had, maybe the technology that we had. But now as we're developing a lot more, those misconceptions don't really hold up to time, to technology also, to advancements.
Exactly.
So it's like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now we learned other things that we believe right now and that we swear by, where we'll just realize, that's not as accurate as we'd like to think. So,
and that's the scary part about having a podcast.
Oh God, that is probably the worst, because you're
outdated information. Speaking of that, about outdated information, we need to edit our website and remove some of our outdated photos, dude.
Yeah,
the About Us page.
Yeah,
that photo definitely needs. It's a 5-year mark. We definitely.
I know we do.
We took that photo in 2019.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
We need to update that photo. It's been 5 years. A lot has changed. We look slightly different.
Yeah, slightly.
Yeah. Wow. And then, do you still have more hats? Because every single time I see the hat photo on our product page, I'm like, dude, we need to update that.
Yeah, I think we do, maybe like one or two.
You should do one of your. Dude, you should do one of your badass little photos that you do with like, it's like hanging suspended in the air, the hat.
Oh, that actually might be cool.
You should do it.
Cool.
I think, and remove like my face off of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we should do a cool little photo shoot with just like for the About page.
Yeah.
Some update stuff. But
that's great. Okay. Well, friends, that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.